Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Kieran and I help people using a spiritual perspective. I probably do, right? We'll see in the future if I actually helped anybody out. But for now, what we'll talk about, of course, is failure. The concept of failing. Now, the whole point of this video, the inspiration behind it, is that things shift and change in my life, your life, the life that is yet to be, everybody's life, okay? Things change. One minute things are going your way, the next they're not going your way, and vice versa. And it's a wonderful, wonderful cycle of life where things are constantly in flux and they change, right? Now, during this life experience, we have goals, we have expectations, and then there inevitably becomes the realization that we haven't reached those expectations or those goals. And so, thus, we have failed, right? We've failed. So this concept of failing our spiritual awakening, failing our career goals, failing in relationships, failing in health, failing just to fail, failing at failing. There's lots of different ways to fail. All kinds of avenues and aspects of our life do we not live up to, do we constantly fall short of. There's this expectation that we have. So failure to us, especially, I think, sensitive human beings, going through any kind of spiritual process where you're trying to make sense of yourself in a deeper way in the world, which might not have the same perspective as you, is a difficult thing to obtain, to not constantly compare yourself to a version of success, even your own version of success. So the concept of failing, I'm here to tell you, is nonsense. It's all bullshit. It is bullshit. There is no failure. Only from a very, very certain, limited perspective can you ever fail at anything. Now let's take an example of, from an athlete. Very good example. Each sport, typically, especially team sports, have some kind of championship at the very end of it. Basketball, for instance. You win the NBA championship, right? The trophy. Stanley Cup for hockey, right? Now, if you're on a team, if you're a player, you could definitely say that if you did not win that championship that year, you have failed. Because your goal was, of course, to win the championship, right? So you might have failed at that. Now, failure in that regard is only as maybe a limited perspective an athlete. As an athlete, that person might have failed, but not as a father or a son or a sibling or a human being or anything else, right? So the I, the little I that we have when we put things in front of words, right? The pronoun I have failed. I have failed to find a new job. I have failed to find a partner. You have failed to move. You've failed to lose X amount of weight, X amount of pounds, right? You've failed. I have failed, right? But I is so all-encompassing. It gives you the idea that it means everything. Everything about who you are has then failed. That's what we're telling ourselves. We're saying that the man, the woman, the friend, the parent, we've failed. The individual, the taxpayer, the kind person, every part of our personality, our persona, what our human self is, that has failed. That's what we're saying. That's what we're saying when we tell ourselves that we failed at things. But it's nonsense. It doesn't actually exist because all of those things about you cannot fail. Only a very, very, very small sliver can actually fail at anything. Right? And even going beyond this concept of I, failure is directly determined, directly influenced by your parameters, your expectations, what you've deemed worthy of success. You're always going to fail if your expectation of success was to become rich overnight. You're always going to fail. If your expectation was to find the most magical, loving partner ever in the whole planet just for you, you're probably going to fail. If you wanted your dream job by the end of the year, you're probably going to fail. If you wanted to be a millionaire by 2024, you're probably going to fail. If you wanted to lose 25 pounds in 2 months, you're probably going to fail. If you wanted to stop using drugs, you're probably going to fail. And it's not because any of those things are necessarily impossible, right? We're not talking about that. We're not talking about the ability to do things here. We're talking about the likelihood of them coming true in the time frame and in the specific way that you want them to. Likely, you're going to fail in doing that. But it's not because you suck, right? It's not because you suck. It's because your expectations are too high. Now, it does not mean have low expectations. It does not mean that your expectations should be, well, I got out of bed. Yeah, maybe that's a little bit too low as a bar, but ultimately what you can do is just remove all of it together. It's not so much about what you've managed to achieve that matters. It's more about how you feel during the process of it. Because there are many times in my life, for example, that I've reached goals, many times that I have not reached goals. Sometimes when I reach goals, I don't feel a shred of happiness. Sometimes you get what you want, doesn't matter. Sometimes you don't get what you want, and initially what disappoints you ends up being fine, and you don't care about later on. So there are many different ways of looking at this, but the most first basis level is to understand, hey, you can't really fail. You can't actually fail when you are never one individual thing. You are not anything. You're everything and nothing at the same time. So you can't just be one thing. Like I've said, you're many, 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 many things. Man, woman, friend, sibling, parent, child, friend, straight, gay, lesbian, whatever. It doesn't matter. You're so many different things. You're spiritual, you like books, you like reading, you like writing, whatever it is. You're all of these different things, all of these different passions and hobbies and insights and perspectives and truths and complications and feelings and weird stuff and skin blemishes and pimples and earwax and imperfections and all of this is who you are. And none of that can fail. Even if you did not get something very important to you, you are not considered a failure. And even when you examine the part of yourself that you've deemed a failure, like in just specifically looking at one aspect, the career, you didn't get that new job or whatever that may be, you didn't really fail because your expectations might have been a bit askew. Trying to find your dream job is not as important as trying to find out what it is that you like doing, right? But with perspectives of money and finances, we get lost in it. We get lost in the real world. We get lost in this stuff. It becomes hard to disassociate from what we are expected to do, what we are supposed to do, and what we logically tell ourselves is the best thing for us. But that's not always the best thing to do. So if you find yourself in a space right now in your life, currently, between me and you can be honest. If you feel like you're a loser, if you feel like you failed, if you feel like you suck, feelings that have permeated my being for many, many years, probably since I was born. I assume I came out of the womb, my first words were, I suck. Probably true. But if you do feel like that, if you do feel those feelings, if you felt them for a long time, or maybe it's just a temporary thing, I want you to just understand, very briefly, even just for a moment if you can feel this, you're not a loser, you didn't fail. You may have reached for something that is beyond reaching for, that there's no point in reaching for, that has nothing to do with your feelings, your emotions, how you feel about yourself, who you are as an individual. You may have reached for something in an effort to give you a sense of peace and contentment and happiness that is beyond yours, that is beyond the point of any of it. Reaching for a job to make you happy, reaching for a new position of power to make you feel secure. No, none of that has anything to do with you. And it has nothing to do with you because none of that can be directly linked to all of your being. Not one single thing can be linked to your being, right? Now, men often define themselves by their career and their money, for example, right? Often, not always, but often. But career and money is not what makes a man a man. And even what makes a man is not what makes a man a man. And there are lots of different things that we reach for in the material world that do not actually encompass who we are. So it's multifaceted. It's essentially two layers, two levels of failure, and neither of them makes sense. So we need to change our definitions of what failure means to us, and we need to accept the fact that even if we are delayed, if we are behind, if we are perceived to not be where we want to be, that is not up to us. That is not our fault, because no delay can be the fault of everything that we are. Because even if we have failed to change a particular diet, we have not failed to become human or to be better or to learn or to gain new information or insights or to do other things really well. So just because we're delayed in one aspect of our life does not mean that our entire being is at fault. And so no matter what spiritual truth you may have come across that tells you otherwise, trust me, you are not a failure. You are not a loser. You can still make changes. You can still try to obtain things, be positive without all of these great expectations hanging over your head. Because ultimately, what happens, I don't know if you know this, but you will die one day. Hopefully not by the end of this video, but one day you will die. And what will be more important is not the list of things you can fit on a single piece of paper, a resume of your life, for instance. It will be how you feel, the remorse, the regrets, the passions, the insights, what you wanted to do, what you didn't want to do, not just filling up a piece of paper. So try to remember that next time you find yourself in a space where you feel that you're just not good enough. Because the chances are that whole idea of not being good enough is someone else's.